not a legal war. There's no authorization for it. There's little public support for it. There's little public explanation of what he's doing. We seem to just be along for the ride with his whims on this one. But what we have is a history of U.S. military regime change operations in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and Libya, leading to very unpredicted consequences that could last for very many years. And again, that's not because the U.S. military couldn't execute the mission. They could. It's what happens inside the politics of these countries after a regime change that has bedeviled the United States and that part of the world so much. And we just have so little clarity on where this is going.
General Hertling, can you speak to that there is no congressional authorization for war with Iran? And I think the last poll numbers I saw, upwards of 70% of Americans oppose a war with Iran.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, Nicole. It has to do with that golden triangle that Clausewitz talks about. You know, the support of the people, the capability and the effectiveness of the government, and the ability of the military to do what they are supposed to do. If you have disconnects in any of those, the war is not going to go well. If the support of the people isn't there, if the government is conducting actions that are contrarian or are confusing, as Ben just said, no matter how good your military is, you can't execute a winning strategy on the political aspects of the war. You know, one of the things I just want to comment on, too, when you played that tape of Secretary Rubio talking, he said, I hope that things will go well. Well, hope isn't a strategy. You really have to plan things out. You really have to make sure that you're prepared for any eventuality because, as Ben just said, the enemy always gets a vote. And that vote sometimes is different than the way you want the war to end up. That's what we're seeing right now, that there seems to be a lot of emphasis on the military, but not so much from the support of the people or the effectiveness of the planning mechanisms and the vision of the government. So there are those disconnects.
Director Brennan, Mark Mazzetti of the New York Times was here yesterday on our program talking about this reporting in the New York Times. Under the headline, "In Trump's Case for War, a Series of False or Unproven Claims," quote, as they made their public case this week for another American military campaign against Iran, President Trump and his aides asserted that Iran has restarted its nuclear program, has enough available nuclear material to build a bomb within days, and is developing long-range missiles that will soon be capable of hitting the United States. All three of these claims are either false or unproven, end quote. What does it mean to start a war against Iran without the credibility of the three publicly stated rationales being true or being, quote, false or unproven, end quote?
Well, I think it just underscores just how unnecessary and reckless this war is. And also, I believe that this war was hatched by Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. This is something that he has long wanted to happen, to have the United States engage in this type of regime change military operation, because he has made claims about Iran's nuclear program also that are false. There is no indication whatsoever that the Iranians were close at all to having the enriched uranium sufficient for a nuclear warhead. And the strikes that were carried out last year that Trump claimed had obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, it clearly was a real setback to them. There's no imminent threat. And so carrying out this war without the rationale that is needed, and as Mark said, that you need to get the American people and you need to get, in fact, the international community behind you. And so I do think that this is going to be seen as very unjustified, unconstitutional, certainly. But what happens now in the aftermath, not just in the days and weeks ahead, but what's going to happen in the months and years ahead? In terms of the devastation that is taking place inside of Iran, is the United States going to be responsible for actually, giving the billions upon billions of dollars that is necessary in order to allow the Iranian people to thrive in the future? But I think more imminently is going to be what is going to be the reaction of the remnants of the Iranian regime, those members of the IRGC and others, whether or not it's just the missile strikes across the Gulf, or they are going to engage in asymmetric attacks, including terrorism or cyber or whatever else. But again, we were right on the precipice. It seemed like there was more Iranian concessions in the nuclear negotiations. But this is the second time I think the Iranians feel that they've been duped. To have negotiations with the United States through the good offices of the Omanis.
Joining me now, Santiago Mayer, Executive Director of Voters of Tomorrow. Jeff Nussbaum is former senior speechwriter for President Joe Biden and author of Undelivered, the never-heard speeches that would have rewritten history. Sarah Matthews is back with us as well. So, Santiago, polls show that young Trump voters have become increasingly unhappy with the president over the Epstein files, the economy, health care. Does that match what you're hearing from young people? Set the stage for tonight.
Yeah, Chris, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I think that what we're going to hear tonight is really a lie fest of unprecedented proportions. Because like you said, Donald Trump has simply not delivered for young Americans. He ran on bringing down the cost of living. He ran on bringing peace and calm throughout the world. He ran on making housing more affordable and accessible to our generation. And he has failed on all three. And if I'm being honest, I think saying he has failed is being a little charitable to him because he hasn't even tried. He used our generation to get elected, and he immediately abandoned all of our priorities once in office. That's why 67% of young Americans disapprove of him. That's why even 58% of young men now say that he has personally affected their finances. And I think that we're going to see the results of that in November. But tonight, there is very little that he can say that is going to make young people simply not feel the effects of his policies.
So, Sarah, some of the most influential podcasters who have had the attention of young male voters have been souring on the president's policies. Take a listen.
This was a breaking point for me. I didn't think what's happening right now with ICE could happen in America. I genuinely did not think that was possible. I thought our institution, I thought the Constitution would hold up.
Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers? Is that what we've come to?
They made every mistake. Liberation Day, disaster. Doge, disaster. Big Beautiful Bill, disaster. Epstein files, disaster. Iran, disaster. All self-inflicted. Trump personnel, Trump policy, Trump strategy, Trump playbook. We tried it your way. It didn't work. F*** you. Now we don't vote.
Is there anything he can say tonight to win them back?
Let me just say that this was so predictable what was going to happen in Trump 2.0. There were folks like myself who served in the first Trump administration, who were on the campaign trail leading up to the 2024 election, who were warning about all this and sounding the alarm. But these podcast pros decided that they wanted to support the president. And now they have buyer's remorse. So, you reap what you sow, and they are paying the consequences. But unfortunately, so many Americans are as well, those who fell for Trump's campaign promises, because as we've laid out, he has not followed through on any of them. He said that he would lower the cost of living, but then he comes out and says that the affordability crisis is a hoax. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he can square that circle in his speech tonight. And I don't think that there is a way to come back from this right now. I think that what we've seen in the recent polling showing that he's now more unpopular than Joe Biden says it all, that people are really unhappy with this presidency. This is not what they signed up for, whether it be the economy or whether it be the immigration enforcement and mass deportations that we've seen. We see in recent polling that people think ICE has gone too far. People wanted immigration enforcement, but they didn't want all the violence and chaos that we're seeing happen in the Trump administration, thanks to Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski's leadership. So I think that Trump is going to have a hard time selling this. His only saving grace right now is that there probably aren't going to be a lot of people who are tuning into this speech. And Trump has a tendency to go very long with his speeches. So I think that even if people tune in, they're going to be listening for the first 15 minutes and probably change the channel. So unless there's some sort of viral moment that's going to catch the attention of millions of Americans, this will probably be a blip on the radar for most people. But I do think that most people are very upset with the failure to deliver on the campaign promises in this presidency. So he's going to have a hard time between now and the midterms of making good on those promises to try to help win back some of those voters for the Republican Party if he wants to help their chances in the midterm elections come November.
So, Jeff, let's talk about those viral moments. Everybody wants a good one, but take us behind the scenes. Can that be crafted? Are there discussions about it? Oh, that's going to hit. That's going to end up going viral. How does that work?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I heartily agree with what we've heard from the other panelists. But it's two things. The State of the Union provides one of the few opportunities to have a extended period of time to make an argument, to actually spell out your policies, explain why you've pursued them and what they're doing. Now, this is a president who more often would prefer to have an argument than make an argument. And so when it comes to viral moments, those certainly come from argumentative moments, either from the floor, which has happened, which I think Hakeem Jeffries hopes will not happen this time, or from what are called Skutnik stories.
This is a big moment here. MAGA is splintering over this. We have talked about it before. Because Trump's base is divided. There are some America First types, some traditional conservatives, and the billionaire class. The traditional conservatives and billionaire class tend to spot war, and a lot of America First people, to be honest, just fall in line with whatever Trump and the rich elites want. But in American politics, everything is on a knife's edge. If even 2 to 3% of Trump's base leaves him, and they don't even have to vote for a Democrat, they just have to stop voting Republican. It could change dozens of races and affect the next presidential election. Imagine if Trump lost just 3% of his vote. That could swing seats in the House and Senate of the Democrats. What's happening now is a lot of MAGA voices are turning on Trump because he made certain promises and then either failed to deliver or went in the opposite direction. For example, he said he would lower the cost of living, but tariffs have driven costs up, and he promised to be a peace president. Yet, he's now bombing Iran, which many see as breaking that promise. In reality, President Joe Biden was the one who ended the long war in Afghanistan. A decision many think will define his legacy positively. Meanwhile, Trump is escalating conflict in Iran and has also pushed military pressure against Venezuela, Greenland, Canada, and potentially other places. And who gets affected if a draft were to happen? It's usually young people, including many of the young men who voted for him, who would be sent to fight. So if he ever brought back the draft, those same supporters he relied on would be the ones on the front lines. The irony is obvious, and for many of his base, it feels like a betrayal of what he once promised.